Hello. So you are at the Sports Management Conference, which happens every year, and you are a college president or a college athletic director, and that's also the case with the rest of the audience.
Exactly.
And our topic today. Would you like to go into the topic, or?
Sure. Just tell us a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking at NCAA athletics, specifically revenue-generating sports. So should college athletes in these revenue-generating sports, namely basketball and football, be compensated?
Okay, very good. Are you ready to start?
And we are ready. Welcome back to Sports Center. I'm Cyril Cantaria. I'm your host today. I'm here live from the Sports Management Conference with Janine Leger, the Director of Athletics at the University of Texas, and Tyler Wallace, who is the General Counsel to the SEC Athletic Conference.
Happy to be here.
Now, we're here to take a deeper dive into the ethical concerns of the current NCAA business model for revenue-generating sports. The problem, as so eloquently stated before the commercial break by Dr. Santa Maria, who is with us, who no longer is that athletes in these sports are indeed exploited. They dedicate 50 hours or more per week of blood, toil, tears, and sweat. Yes, that's Churchill, you can look it up, which detracts from their academics. They expose themselves to even greater health risks. And they do all of this just to enable their schools to make millions of dollars of revenues. Of course, these athletes' compensation pales in comparison to this revenue that these schools are making. Now, last year, the NCAA took in $800 million in revenue. And how much do the student athletes get of that? None. So, Janine, before the break, you proposed a great solution, and I just want you to start by giving us a synopsis of that solution for the viewers who just joined us.
Yes, thank you, Cyril. I proposed a three-part solution to ensure rightful compensation of these athletes. The students will be granted thorough healthcare coverage, more academic security, and a performance-based salary from outside sponsorships.
Great, so let me stop you there. Before we delve into the solution, let's start at square one. So Tyler, help me better understand how these student athletes are vulnerable to exploitation. So let's take a day in the life of, let's step into the life of a student athlete before, during, and after they play college sports.
All right, well, that's a great proposition, Cyril. But I'd have to start by saying and acknowledging that there is really no one universal student-athlete experience. However, we have noticed some current trends that affect the majority of athletes, and that's what we're here to discuss and try to resolve. So let's begin with the recruitment process. The average football player is recruited sophomore and junior year of high school by coaches who come to them, give them a phone call or come to their living room, and sort of reveal this elaborate and very seductive pitch. They tell them, among other promises, that they're going to have academic freedom, incredible academic facilities, that they're going to have perhaps stardom, a shot at the pros. But most importantly, what they promise them is a culture, a community on campus that will provide for them, a family that will keep them safe. And when they arrive on campus, that could not be farther from what they find.
Now that's a very strong statement there, Tyler. Tell me more about this asymmetric information problem.
Well, we'll start with the notion of the free ride, right? The coaches and athletic directors come to these athletes and say, we will give you a free ride if you attend our institution. However, a study conducted just as recently as last year in 2012 by the National Collegiate Players Association found that on average, the athletic scholarship falls $3,000 short of the average cost of attendance. And that's an incredible burden for these students who arrive on campus having the expectation that they're going to get like a completely expenses paid college experience.
All right, so tell me what happens when they actually get on campus.
Well, unfortunately, that's when this sort of illusion, this facade really does begin to disintegrate. The idea that there are endless possibilities, academic possibilities for them, could not be farther from the truth. Because of their athletic schedules, they can't take certain morning and afternoon classes, which right off the bat eliminates certain majors, pre-med, engineering, the more involved majors that tend to lead to the more lucrative professions. I mean, I've had students come into my office and say, I want to be pre-med, I want to be an engineer, but I simply can't fit the prereqs into my curriculum. And that's really unacceptable considering the expectations that they're given.
Yeah.
What it comes down to is that in 1957 is when this concept of the student athlete was invented, the moniker, by the NCAA. And it was invented in anticipation for the backlash that they'd receive for allowing athletic scholarships. It's a complete, it's propaganda. Really what these students are is they're athletes on campus, and half of them end up getting a degree.
All right, I think we've heard it. I think we've heard.
Well, I mean, Cyril, honestly, I'd like to make one more point, please. And I would say this is their experience post-graduation, but it's really not, because half of them don't graduate. It's post-college. They've got tremendous physical difficulties. 98% of football players don't go on to the NFL, and 99% of basketball players don't go on to the NBA. After college, their athletic careers are over. But what's just beginning is a lifelong battle with health concerns, with the maladies and the injuries that they sustained in school. So we're talking about 35-year-olds, 40-year-olds with knee replacement surgeries, hip replacement surgeries, torn ligaments and tendons in their necks, their backs, their shoulders. Where's the community that they were promised at 17, at 18, to provide for them when they're 40 and they're suffering these maladies? It's nowhere to be found. It's unconscionable.
Yes, Tyler, that's exactly what points my moral compass astray. These kids aren't even compensated and they're injured. It's amazing. Now,
and I'd like to make one more point.
Please.
Since we're examining this from this perspective of business ethics, let's talk about the career potential and prospects that they have when they're 30 and 40 years old. Let's talk about a job that requires flying across country a couple times a month. Being at that altitude with the kind of knee pain and joint injuries that they have is impossible. Career opportunities are truly limited, but no one talks about this.
Right. So, Tyler, I think you've really hit on a lot of the unethical components of the current model. Now, let's talk to you, Janine. I mean, how does the solution you propose address these issues?
Thanks, Cyril. I want to start by explaining in what ways these athletes will be compensated and how this multi-dimensional solution will mitigate these existing problems. First, athletes can be compensated from outside corporations like Nike and Adidas through sponsorships. Second, all scholarships from the school are mandated for 4 years. Finally, athletes can take advantage of lifetime insurance coverage. Admittedly, this is not a panacea, but I think the benefit outweigh the potential downfalls.
Janine, I mean, please elaborate. I think this solution would be taking this system and turning it upside down. I mean, hypothetically, we're talking about giving these youngsters massive sums of money. I mean, what are the possible effects of giving 18, 19-year-olds such large paychecks? I'm envisioning substantial negative effects to not only themselves but their communities.
Obviously, opening up these channels of income to teenagers and young adults may make these kids vulnerable to society's vices. It gives rise to potential concerns regarding how that might affect their behavior and their status among their peers on campus. But only the star players will receive large sums of money, and those are the same individuals who are going on to make millions of dollars later on in life. So, as I envision it, rather than coddling these individuals in enclosed ecosystems comprised of coaches and boosters, and then unleashing them into a professional pool, this new system will ideally, and I admit this is a bit optimistic, provide the resources that allow them to mature into well-rounded adults and leaders.
All right, so this new model allows these star athletes to stay in college and develop into leaders. I mean, sure, that's optimistic, but I buy that. Now, what are the effects of the healthcare fund that you spoke of?
Well, the fear of injury is no longer a burden to these athletes, relieving athletes and their families from the lifetime costs of persistent injuries. In order to provide for long-term health care, the NCAA needs a huge sum of money. Fortunately for them, they're sitting on a $500 million trust fund that they can use to put into benefit pools.
All right, so these athletes are getting the health care they deserve. But what about the academic protection? Will students really put academics before athletics, or does this just increase the cost for colleges?
With my idea to offer 4-year scholarships to all athletes, costs will increase for individual programs. But it also protects the players because coaches lose their power to cut these players whenever they feel like it. This is an investment to the athletes. The athletes deserve to know what the coaches think and when they can kick them off the team. Is it expensive? Cyril, yes, it is. But But schools can reduce roster sizes by cutting down their walk-on players and use that money instead to pay for these 4-year scholarships.
All right, Janine, so let me get this all straight. You're saying that the 4-year mandated scholarships would greatly enhance the academic experience of these athletes by guaranteeing them an education for 4 years. I get that. Now, a healthcare fund will relieve the financial burden that many of these players face from the injuries. And finally, that the outside scholarships will give the players the compensation they deserve. Is that right?
Cyril, you're absolutely right, and this needs to be enacted.
Great. So I think the solution brings equity and fairness, from what I could tell, to the lives of student athletes. If I know anything, I mean, that's ethics at its best. So once again, my name is Cyril Cantaria. I'd like to thank our guests today, and I hope to see you next time. This is SportsCenter.
Thank you. You had 2 seconds left. Did you want to say anything else?